never made it, but I know what it takes. I'm motivated by a mix of emotion. Got my statement, and I'm reading it slow so I can understand it fully. Appreciate my standing, go out of this world and right on time. Oh, never in my life have I seen the sky light up like this. I'm far away from Earth and I wanna know if you exist. Mission control, do you read me? Send me my coordinates lately. Mission control, am I drifting? Tie me to someone who will love me, yeah, wait.
Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone to another Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Wherever you are, whatever you may be doing, thank you so much for making Ref Brandon and the Todd Family a part of your day. We always greatly appreciate it. It is a Sunday. Hopefully you've enjoyed your weekend so far, and hopefully if you have kids, grandkids, great-grandkids, nieces and nephews, whatever the case may be, you have taken them trick-or-treating at least one time already so far this weekend. I know when I was a kid, I loved trick-or-treating only because I loved getting the candy. Now that I have 3 kids who are all still in the trick-or-treating stages, I like to let them go trick-or-treating, and then when they get done, look through their bags and say, do you eat those? Do you eat those? Do you like that? Do you want that? Can I have that? You want to share that? So that is the fun that I get every year on Halloween weekend. I've already done that a couple times so far this year, and we are not done getting our Halloween candy yet. But if you have any questions, concerns, comments, anything about the college football games from yesterday, please feel free to let me know. We did not have a lot of great marquee games like we've had the last 2 Saturdays, but there were some games that honestly, really, truly, on paper, looked like they were going to be good games, and then, for whatever reason, you see the score or you watch the game and you're like, man, what happened? I thought that was going to be a good game, and it just didn't happen. But Ohio State defeated Penn State by the score of 44-31. And at last check on Wednesday night, Ohio State was about a 2-touchdown favorite, and they won the game by 13. But it was actually a lot closer than that. It was actually Ohio State 30, Penn State 24, with about 5 minutes to go in the game. So it was a 1-score game, and then Ohio State scored and made it 37-24. Then Penn State came back and threw a pick 6 on the next drive and made it Ohio State 44, Penn State 24. And then Penn State got a garbage touchdown there at the end of the game. But it was close for a long time. But neither team really, for the most part, could run the ball. Both teams had decided, hey, we're going to take away the run and make them beat us passing. And Ohio State did have one long touchdown run in the fourth quarter, but outside of that, neither team ran the ball any good. Arkansas defeats Auburn by the score of 41-27, and Florida State defeated Georgia Tech by the score of 41-16. Notre Dame, in a small upset, defeated Syracuse by the score of 41-24. And then this game I wrote down, I'll tell you the score, and then I'll tell you why I wrote it down. And it was a pitiful game. If you had insomnia yesterday and couldn't sleep, if you watched this game, you went to sleep. UConn defeated Boston College by the score of 13-3. Now UConn on the verge of going to a bowl game in the first year under new head coach Jim Mora Jr. But if you follow the channel, you know that back around, I think 4 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago, I did a weekly Wednesday top 10 countdown, which, by the way, if you have not watched this past Wednesday's top 10 countdown, I encourage you to go back and watch it. We do one each and every Wednesday here on the channel. But about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I did a top 10 countdown on what I thought was the current top 10 worst teams in college football. And I had Boston College on the list, and I said Boston College was terrible. And my man Mike, who is a big Georgia Tech fan, said he thought that I should have put Georgia Tech on the list instead of Boston College. And I said, no, I put Boston College on the list because I think if Boston College and Georgia Tech played right now, I think Georgia Tech would beat them, and I still think that. But I said in that video that Boston College had one game coming up later on in the year that they might win at UConn, and they may not win that one, but if not, they won't win a game the rest of the year. And sure enough, they lost to UConn. So it's amazing how Boston College was decent last year, and this year they're just flat out awful. TCU remains undefeated. They defeated West Virginia yesterday by the score of 41-31. I thought it'd be a close game because the game was in Morgantown, and sure enough, the Mountaineers kept the game close, but TCU was just the better team. And then one of the ugliest games you're ever going to see. This game was so bad, it made Boston College and UConn look good. And that was the Miami Hurricanes. Big bad, the U. We're back, baby. The U is back. Miami defeated Virginia 14-12 in 4 overtimes. At the end of regulation, the score was 6-6. In the first overtime, both teams got a field goal, made it 9-9. In the second overtime, both teams got a field goal, made it 12-12. Neither team scored in the third overtime. And in the fourth overtime, Miami won the game 14-12. And it was funny because I've been saying here on the channel that Mario Cristobal is a phenomenal recruiter. But the man just has no clue how to coach football. And don't ask me which host it was. I listen to way too much sports talk. It might have been a local guy, might have been a national guy. I don't even remember. Anyway, whoever I was listening to earlier this week, I think it was Thursday, said that Miami's recruiting next year is looking like they're going to be a top 5 team. And then the host said, well, we know that Mario Cristobal is not a good game day coach. And I was thinking, yeah, I've been saying that for at least 6 months. So maybe other people are finally starting to see that. He is a phenomenal recruiter. But I think when it comes to just overall game day coaching, Mario Cristobal is about as dumb as a box of rocks. Georgia defeated Florida by the score of 42-20. And as of Friday night, the spread in that game was Georgia by 22.5, and Georgia won by 22. So if anybody betted one way or the other, they're going to be awfully, awfully mad because it was right on what the point spread was. I thought it was going to be something like Georgia 38, Florida 10, or Florida 13, and Florida to get a late garbage touchdown to cover the spread, but the game still wouldn't be close. And for the most part, it wasn't. Florida tried to get it close there second half, but Georgia never really had a reason to feel like the game was in doubt. Another small upset, and that was Louisville defeating Wake Forest 48-21. The reason why I say small upset is because most people don't really understand that Wake Forest is actually a really good football team, so they're not going to be surprised by that score. But Wake Forest had 8 turnovers in the game. It doesn't matter how good you are. You turn the ball over 8 times, more than likely you're going to get beat. And then another game that was a complete, total shocker. Kansas State defeated Oklahoma State by the score of 48-0. And that was a game that I actually thought was going to be a good game. But you could tell by the end of the first quarter, that game was never in doubt. For some reason, Oklahoma State just looked awful, and I mean awful, on both sides of the ball. Missouri defeated South Carolina by the score of 23-10. That's the most Gamecock thing ever. You finally get ranked for the first time in about 4 years, and then your very next game, you go out and lay an egg against Missouri. USC holds off Arizona by the score of 45-37. North Carolina defeated Pittsburgh by the score of 42-24. And North Carolina pretty much has all but wrapped up their side of the ACC. They now have a 3-game lead over Pittsburgh. So barring just an epic collapse by North Carolina, they've all but wrapped up their side of the ACC. Ole Miss defeated Texas A&M by the score of 31-28. And at one time in that game, Texas A&M was winning the game, and I thought to myself, you watch. Texas A&M's played like dog doo-doo for the past month, and they'll go out and play Ole Miss, and they'll beat them. But Ole Miss did hold on to beat them 31-28. And Iowa had an offensive explosion, an absolute offensive explosion, especially for Iowa. If Iowa scores more than 20 points, that's another team scoring about 60, because Iowa just doesn't score. But they defeat Northwestern by the score of 33-13. Michigan, in what was a rivalry game, even though the Spartans are no good, Michigan defeats Michigan State by the score of 29-7. And then Illinois defeats Nebraska by the score of 26-9. It's Brett Bielema's second year in Champaign, and they're already leading their half of the Big Ten, currently setting at 7-1 on the season. So Bielema has turned them around really, really fast. And we know that the first playoff poll comes out on Tuesday night. So I figured I would go ahead and give you my predictions on what I think the top 4 will look like when it comes out. Not that it matters, because there's still at least 4 regular season games left for everybody. So a lot can change in a month's time. But I do believe that when the first playoff poll comes out Tuesday night, I believe Georgia will be number 1, Ohio State number 2, Tennessee number 3, and Clemson will be number 4. The only reason I didn't talk about the Tennessee game from last night is because that's one of those games that everybody, including me, thought was going to be close, and it was. Tennessee 7, Kentucky 6 for a short time, and you thought, oh, this is going to be a good game. And it wasn't. Tennessee looked really, really good. So the game this upcoming Saturday between Georgia and Tennessee should be one for the ages. I know I've heard some Georgia people complaining this past week about the game being at 3:30 because they wanted a night game. Me personally, as long as I've been watching Clemson football, I honestly don't care when they play. 12 o'clock's fine, 3:30's fine, 7 o'clock's fine, 8 o'clock's fine. If I ain't got a wrestling show and I'm going to be home, just let them play. When they play, I'll watch. Now, most of the time, I've got a wrestling show just about every single weekend. So for me, I like the 12 o'clock games because typically I leave the house around 3:30 or 4. So the noon games gives me a chance to watch the game live before I leave and go to wrestling. But if I was going to be home and I was home all day long, just going to sit back and watch football, I wouldn't care what time the game is. All I would know is that, hey, Clemson plays this time, that's who I'm watching. Any other game on during that time, doesn't matter. I'm watching Clemson. But a lot of people prefer their teams playing at night. And I've heard some Georgia fans complaining this week because they want to play Tennessee at nighttime, and the game has already been announced for the 3:30 CBS game. And I told them, well, that's because CBS gets first dibs on the SEC, and of course they're going to pick the best game of the day because they want all the eyeballs at 3:30 to be on CBS. So if you give them first dibs, they're going to pick the game of the day in that conference. And the game of the day in the conference next Saturday is Georgia and Tennessee. So if you have a preference on what time you like your team to play, please feel free to let me know. Like I said, I prefer the noon games only because of wrestling. But now, if I was going to a game like I used to go to the games, I would also prefer a noon game because it allows me to get up early, leave early, get there early, beat traffic, watch the game, and then I'm still back home by 7 o'clock, 7:30. So whatever the night game is, I can watch it. If it's a 3:30 game or an 8 o'clock game, you don't get to see anything because you've got to leave your house by lunchtime to beat the traffic. And then by the time the game's over with and you get back to your car and get home, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. And the only game you saw the entire day was the game you went and watched in person. So if I was going to the games, I would prefer the noon games only for traffic's sake and being able to watch the late games and you're not out that late. But if I'm at home and I'm going to watch football all day long, I don't really care what time my team plays. Just tell me they're going to play, tell me what time, tell me what channel, and I'm going to watch it. But for some reason, I know most people prefer their team playing a night game. So any thoughts on that, please feel free to let me know. Let's go ahead and get our dad joke of the day in here. What has more letters than the alphabet? The post office. And that wraps it up for today's Ref Brandon and the Todd Family YouTube video. Until next time, it's Ref Brandon saying, just like in pro wrestling, life can be over by the count of 3. Tell your friends and family how much you love them. Bye.